Hello, hi everyone, this is
Hi.
Bhavani.
This is Kishan.
Hi, well, welcome to our third episode of for our live legal news update.
Yeah.
Lots been happening, hasn't been, Kishan?
Yeah. So much to talk about.
Lots to talk about.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it might be useful to just start with what we've been doing.
Yeah, definitely.
So I don't know whether people have been following us or not, but we've moved offices this last month. We've been nominated for an award, and we went to a very nice ceremony earlier this year at the Solicitors Journal Awards for Diversity Scheme of the Year, which was great. We made loads of contacts there. Yeah, we've expanded our kind of retainers and changed our website. So please, everyone, take a look. Go and see what we've been up to.
Have a browse. Give us your comments. Give us your feedback. It'd be good to know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I thought we might talk about where we've moved to. So we've moved to near Mansion House, into essentially what is known as a kind of a co-working type of space, but based near Bank. And really, I thought it's kind of useful for people to know a little bit about what's going on the ground in terms of business and business practice, I think, in London. And we wanted to really be in the heart of that because of all the clients that we work with.
Yeah, all the changes. It's a very modern sort of working space, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's good to meet new companies out here, tech companies and different ones.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I wanted to speak to you about, Kishan, is this, because I know that last year we experimented a little bit with this and we found it was good, but there's so much, people feel that there's so much uncertainty around at the moment, but then you come to a place like this and you realise there's a lot of activity. And where do you think we can fit in with kind of working with companies that are kind of growth focused, kind of working in London and kind of working technologies? I mean, I know we do a few things, but it might be helpful to just talk about.
Yeah, I think that's an important question. I think uncertainty certainly pervades the startup market. Certainly pervades the startup market and also the SME market, as you all know. And the way that we can certainly help, and especially with legal support, is give more certainty with our fees and our fee structures. So fixed fees and really suitable retainer packages. A lot of the times, the clients that I've met in these co-working spaces, they've only just started out. They have no idea what agreements they need in place. They don't know what's going to be coming to their business. And of course, we've had the experience of seeing the ups and downs of businesses. And it's about giving them regular support, regular hand-holding, advice in those areas, and a lot of them have found that quite useful. Yeah, I mean, look, one of the things that I saw recently, hi Zed, by the way, thank you for watching. Hello.
Is there's been, I mean, obviously as someone who's involved, and we're both involved in legal services and interested in how they're changing. There was something in the Law Society Gazette, so if any lawyers out there, about changes that might require law firms to be transparent about their fees, so kind of comparative fees.
Yes.
And the other thing is that I've picked up on in the Solicitors Journal is, the impact of deregulation. Now, I think both of those things kind of are part of this drive towards providing clients with certainty. When we talk about fixed fee retainers, I think it's really a part of that trend of being able to say, we're transparent in how we're doing stuff. I think clients particularly now are asking for it. I don't think we can shy away from saying that it is in the most certain of business environments. It's helpful from that point of view. But also to then be able to compete with providers who don't have the same level of regulation as we do. I mean, I don't know about you, but I still feel that it's important to have the regulatory underpinning.
Absolutely.
But we need to be aware of how that...
Yeah, I guess you're striking a balance between making sure that you're regulated and all the procedures are in place and there's compliance over what we do, and then you're getting a quality service and you're getting the insurance back behind it. And at the same time, a lot of companies, a lot of businesses come to me and say they always feel that lawyers are very expensive. They're going to charge these crazy hourly rates for work. And it's about creating a very flexible, creative model to try and offer that support at a very reasonable and competitive prices. Hi
Kesh, thank you for joining. We've just been talking about recent events at the London Law Practice. We've just moved to central London, and we're talking about how we can, how law firms could now possibly provide a more certain type of fee structure to business clients, and that's certainly the space we've been operating in for a while. So that's all really good. I think the other part of it is this, as I was explaining earlier, is that when the way that people are doing business now is different. I think to understand. So with lawyers sometimes, because we've often been stuck behind desks, and rather than going out and seeing our clients, it's not always been easy to understand how fast things have moved. Like really, I think when I started, which was 5 years ago, even the changes that have happened in the last few years, we didn't really know about them. And now you see how businesses are doing things. You just realise how flexible, how creative they are, and how responsive they want their lawyers to be. And it kind of made me think about something that you were speaking about earlier, which is there's been some review into zero-hour contracts. I know it's part of the whole election thing, but it might be helpful to talk about that and how that fits in with the way that people are working. Yeah,
definitely. There's been a whole review on whether or not zero-hours contracts are viable for both the employee and the employer. And there's a huge argument. I mean, you might have seen in the news recently with Glastonbury that there's this whole argument about how they've abused those workers that were on zero-hours contracts, and it's very easy to get rid of them after. There's no certainty of hours of work, and they're still getting paid the minimum wage perhaps on those hours, and so because of the uncertainty in the market, being under a zero-hours contract, there's this need that from the review that they should get rid of it completely, and certainly the Labour Party have put forward in their manifesto last year about getting rid of them, and I think it's very likely to happen in maybe in this government, possibly.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know about whether the present government is going to be getting rid of them, but I certainly think from everything that I've read in the legal press is that there is not only the challenges to what people would call the gig economy, but so there are the legal challenges. We've talked about them in previous episodes. You know, the Uber case and City Sprint and so on and so forth. But also, I think there are lots of challenges to having for businesses that are just relying on people on zero-hour contracts. I think politically it's not as kind of as viable as it was before. So certainly there are lots of pressures, and I know that even trade unions are getting involved now in looking at policies around this, because one of the things is that employment rights, as you well know as an employment lawyer, have taken a long time to come to bear. And so people have worked hard to get certain rights, and what I think people are worried about is those rights being lost.
Yes.
But then we still need to have, there are advantages for workers.
Yeah, it's a balancing act. I mean, for zero-hours contracts do work well with Hayashish. Do work very well when it comes to students. For example, working in retail, and they want the flexibility. So if employees want flexibility and employees want to give that flexibility, then it's a great approach. But it doesn't work well when employers are sort of abusing that flexibility, and then the workers don't have any choice but to only work when they're told to work. And it's that uncertainty around it. So I think there's two solutions to this. One solution that was proposed is to increase the minimum wage for those workers that are on zero-hours contracts. And the second review is to when you have the right to flexible working, which was brought in a couple of years ago, is to give the right to request further hours or fixed hours of work, and that's always going to be subject to the employer's consent, and it's at their discretion still. So it's not that strong giving that sort of right, but it might be a solution around the zero-hours contract. The other way to look at it, and certainly this is what I would advise some clients, is instead of using zero-hours contracts, is to use a consultancy agreement. and try and become self-employed and
Yeah.
go down that route as a possible avenue to
As a
explore.
possible, but
Yeah.
I think you even then, before anyone does that, I think you need to make sure that you can be compliant.
Exactly. So the drawback of that then, and there's disadvantages and advantages of every option. For this one, it's making sure that you're IR35 compliant, so you're genuinely self-employed, and that so you don't fall into the trap of what Uber and City Spring were had those issues and troubles with their contracts. And so it's making sure that they are that way, and it usually only works for those specialists and those that are quite experienced and charge quite decent amount of a day rate. So it might not work for everyone. It might not work for certain workers.
Yeah. No, I think it's really interesting. I think politically it's interesting. I think that now where we see business, I mean, the reason why we were talking about it, and hello Jonathan and Wendy, thank you for joining. Oh, by the way, if anyone has questions, please do post and we'll answer them as we're going along. We've covered a little bit around retainers, and we're just talking about
0 hours contracts and the gig economy.
In the gig economy. And the reason we were talking about it is because of the way that businesses are now have adapted to using independent workers. We're talking about co-working spaces and how flexibility is such an important part of working life and working patterns now, and obviously technology has helped that happen. I mean, we said they raised it during the last elections.
Yes.
Contracts. I think the other thing that we should possibly talk about is where we are post-election on the issue of Brexit.
Oh,
because whether we like it or not, this is going to continue for the next couple of years. And I think businesses are now trying to feel their way around what kind of changes might be happening.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know about you, but I think that it looks like they're talking about transition type of arrangements rather than a cliff edge. For people who haven't been following all of that, it means that before the election, there was a drive to get the UK out of the single market as quickly as possible. And that would mean obviously stopping free movement of people and being able to have our own kind of choice about how we want to have our own immigration systems, and also free trade agreements with other countries. Now, having a transition period is a little bit different, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. It's going to take time to transition, and there's this whole argument about having international trade agreements in place with countries like America. What's your view on that? Because I know that you had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I have very strong opinions on most things. So I think that, so it depends on who you speak with, but I think the UK was aligning itself to have a free trade agreement with the US as quickly as possible. The current administration in the States is obviously very anti-regulation.
Yeah.
So one of the concerns that people had were around regulations around food and the environment, so on and so forth. It may well be good for trade to have lower regulations, but it's not so great for people who are concerned about what's in their food and how it might impact the environment. So again, for businesses looking at opportunities, I would say keep a very close eye on what's happening. The legislation we have works as it is. We're still a part of the European Union, but for businesses getting ready for the next couple of years, I think what we're looking at now is having what they're calling a softer Brexit.
Yeah.
It may well change. We don't know. It may change.
Yeah.
So that means, we may still retain. I think this is what I think. I think that depending on who's going to be pulling the levers, we may well still retain some of our disputes being dealt with within the European Union jurisdiction.
Yeah.
I think this was the big problem that some people had, was they didn't want to have any of our decision making being done by the European Union. So we might see that. I think Zed's got a question. Do you believe that the UK can ever get favourable deal? In my opinion, it's not going to happen. Also, Donald Trump knows the UK will be desperate for a deal. I can't see a good outcome at all. We have no bargaining power.
That's very true.
I don't. Unfortunately,
there's no bargaining power.
do you know what? I don't know about that. So I think that I've basically decided that I don't know whether we can make any predictions anymore about things. It's just so.
We could have another general election.
We might have another general election, and I think that. But as we were saying before, I think that it's not going to be this cliff edge. I think that there's no majority in Parliament for it. There's definitely going to be parliamentary scrutiny over anything that passes through. So what I've been reading recently is and I think it might be Linklaters, I'm not sure, did a kind of a report on this. And basically what they were saying is, look, we have to have a principles-based approach to how we deal with the incorporating about 12,000 different pieces of legislation into UK-based law, and they're not going to look at changing policy. So I think that, I think it's difficult to say, but I don't think there's any majority for kind of a very clear break in the way that we were looking at before. I'm not making any predictions aside from that.
Actually, Bob makes a good point. He says that UK is a major player in the world. And that's true. We are a big country. Decades of expertise, experience in certain areas. So it's very strange if we're not able to get out there and do business with other countries.
I think we remain the 5th largest economy. We have a lot of soft power, as they say. Our universities are still known to be some of the best in the world. Some of the best in the world. From a legal point of view, we remain. We have a lot of experience here.
Exactly.
We talked about it in the last episode.
Yeah, we've got a centre of arbitration and a lot of mediation takes place here. A lot of international disputes are resolved in London. It'd just be strange for us not to play our part in the world. You know?
I think, we can't comment on politics and all those things, but what we can say is that, we're in interesting times. I think that and also you don't know how things are going to change. You don't know. We've got Macron in France, we've got Trump in America. We've got two very different characters on the world stage that have appeared in the last year and a half. So let's keep watching this space.
Yeah, it'll be interesting times, and I think from a legal point of view, especially in terms of employment law, I don't think that we're going to get rid of all the workers' rights that we've built over time, such as those that are embedded already in the Equality Act and those kind of things. I don't see that getting rid of it overnight. That's definitely not going to happen. So.
Just wonder what else people are saying here.
Yeah, sure. So there's a lot of interest on Brexit. I'm sure everyone's got very strong views on it. So Zawar says that the best deal isn't necessarily a good deal, which is, I think, a fair point. And Bob says we may be heavily reliant on UDP.
You can turn
at any time, opposite forces.
Now I think the UK wants to get on with it.
Yeah.
I think, I think it's a policy of wait and watch this space. I think that politics is moving a lot faster than most commentators can comment. But I think from a business point of view, I think that businesses would be wise to keep a close ear to the ground.
Yeah.
But I don't think, having had the recent election and as you say, I think Bob has rightly said, the government doesn't have a majority; it's a minority government. Therefore, we are in a position where Parliament is going to have much bigger say in what happens. And look, we're a parliamentary democracy. If anyone hasn't already been, go to the Houses of Parliament. It was probably one of the best tours I've ever done. It's incredible. So if you're interested in politics and history and law, go and do that. It's amazing.
I should go check that out.
Check it out. It's very, very good. So any other questions? Please
do post them. Do post.
Do
some
post.
Questions to us.
We're happy to engage in kind of debate about those.
Yeah, sure. So Brexit was obviously very interesting, and unfortunately we've had some quite sad news lately. Various things, and one was, of course, the Grenfell Tower incident, which was horrific, and our thoughts, of course, go out to those that suffered from it.
Yeah.
And there's this whole debate now sprung up about building regulations, and There's this whole thing with using cladding, for example, on these buildings. And so I think it's a big debate going on in Parliament right now about reviewing the building regulations. I know that the Financial Times recently did a news story on this, and there were calls to review building regulations. Some years back, I think about 11 years ago, they were due to review it. And a lot of those calls and those about how dangerous the use of the cladding is went unheard, and they haven't actually changed the building regulations, kept it static for a very long time. So that's of course a very hot topic at the moment.
Do you know what I think? Again, I kind of have to come at this just because we're talking about in the context of this. It's completely horrific what happened, and I think most people watching that or hearing about it or listening to it would think, from a common sense point of view, how is it even possible to have materials being used in, whether it's tower blocks or any kind of buildings that are compliant but flammable? It's incredible. But what it made me think was, look, we as advisors, we sometimes work with clients who are like looking into going into properties, or like we're interested generally in what's happening in the market on the property side. And one question I had was, if these regulations have been in place, does that mean that buildings have been built in the past that are compliant but are not necessarily particularly safe? Where does that leave our building industry, and where can we see, I mean, if one of the things that the country's going to be looking to do is maintain construction, how are we maintaining construction when there are questions about regulations? Now, I would say, just to be clear, I'm not a building regulation expert, but we do some property work in the firm, and we're interested in the business environment in general. So I think those are questions to be asked.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's loads of questions to be asked. I mean, when we purchase a property, we do our searches and the regular stuff. You hire a solicitor who will deal with the exchange and the completion. But there's, I've bought property in the past, and what's really important to me and to those people that are investing in property or purchasing it, I think, is making sure that you've done all your homework on the property, and that could mean, for example, getting a proper home buyer survey report done, and getting a chartered surveyor who's a RICS qualified to have a look at the property and making sure that the right materials are used, because we're not experts, and we can only rely on experts to do that work for us and give us a good report at the end of it, and that could be useful to make a decision on the purchase. So.
I think it's a good point that you make. I mean, often when we always say to people, look, make sure you do your searches. But I think one of the questions maybe people need to ask now is, what kind of materials have been used? It's not something that as lay people we would have asked in the past. Bob is saying we need change in the sector.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, sounds like that change is coming.
It is coming.
It's coming.
I would imagine it would be reviewed by the government, especially in light of what's happened.
Yeah.
And I know that they've done some reviews on different buildings, especially those that are owned by the council, and I think they've come back with very negative responses about how it's not compliant with some basic, health and safety issues, and they've come up with various
I think that what they found was that there was a difference between what is legally compliant and then what actually works. So they were saying these are fine, they're in line with building regulations as they are. As you were saying, there were recommendations made a number of years ago, and they've never made their way into legislation, so they were only ever recommendations, and therefore they're legal, but that doesn't necessarily mean, I guess, I don't know whether there's some...
Yeah, I think so. Just Bob is saying, as a finance broker that deals in commercial arena, we see all too often that banks don't ask for fire risk assessment reports. Some thankfully do, and it will open your eyes how many properties fail the basic tests of fire escape.
Oh, wow. And
the home buyers report, which I was speaking about earlier, should now incorporate a FRA report, fire risk assessment report. I wasn't aware of that actually, Bob, and that's a very interesting point you make. And I certainly think that if there's a review of the legislation, they should incorporate fire risk assessments. It's clearly quite essential. I'm really shocked that it's not already part of it.
It is actually, and this I think has really opened up a big area that as lay people, even as legal advisors, is not something that you would have necessarily turned your mind to. So I think that the last few months we've had, the last few weeks even, because we had our last episode just a month or so ago. At that time, I mean, there's been a lot of things that we anticipate are going to happen, whether it's on the building regs side, the 0-hour contracts on Brexit. I mean, all of these things are going to be important for businesses to anticipate what's going to be happening. I mean,
and just following on from what Bhavani was saying, I think because we're such a great democracy, a lot of people underutilise the opportunity of reaching out to their MPs about these issues. And if you are in a building and you feel genuinely worried about your safety, then it's important to reach out to the council, reach out to your local MP, get involved, get active in democracy, and hopefully that will then lead to some changes in the law. So do petition them. I think one of the things, I mean, this is kind of going off the point and kind of looking at what Zed is saying as well, which is that I think, look, this is what Zed's saying is important, because this is not a legal point, so this is just a general comment. Politically, I think people are very engaged and aware and interested. I think that's a very good thing. The point that you make, Zed, is important, because and I guess what has happened is that because we've got much bigger participation from people, there is going to be this kind of scrutiny of conflicts, of what people's motivating factors are, of what is in the best interest of the country. And you know what that means? That you have very wide-ranging points of view within the public debate, which is different from about even 2 or 3 years ago. If you look at how narrowly we were discussing issues back then, to how it's a broad range of issues. And what's going to be interesting is to see how they're going to consolidate those views. When it comes to forming legislation and coming to forming ideas, and how council should behave when they deal with these kind of things.
Well, I think this probably goes into public law arena rather than a commercial law arena, but the idea of greater participation, and if we continue to have things like hung parliaments, would probably dictate a need to change the way we're electing people, because otherwise we're going to continue to get hung parliaments, and probably a desire from the public that you have people working together much more closely. I know that post the election there were a few people talking about having a government acting in the national interest and so on and so forth, but I think that's really coming from understanding that we have very different points of view now that are now competing for the public space.
I think it does. I mean, look, these kind of issues do affect the commercial space as well, because these laws will affect businesses. And I know a lot of businesses do also get involved in sort of all-party parliamentary groups, especially those that are involved in property, and they try and put forward their views. And I think it's important that businesses as a whole, and also individuals that are concerned about these issues, get involved as much as they can. So that we do have strong laws in place to help us.
I mean, watch this space as always.
Absolutely, watch this space.
I mean, is there anything else that we've kind of been talking about over the last few weeks? It feels like there's a lot. There's
been a lot going on. I think it's nice to focus on these topics, and I guess for our viewers out there, it gives you a chance to reflect on them. Of course, if you have any questions, any concerns, and generally, then just give us a call, or contact us on our page, and we'll get back to you with our responses.
Definitely. Thank you, Zed, for joining us. I know you've got to go. Well, I think we're probably coming to kind of shortly to an end to this session anyway. If, as Kishan was saying, if anyone's got any questions on any of the topics that we've been discussing, whether it's kind of co-working spaces, fixed fee retainers, whether it's 0-hour contracts, subcontracting, anything around trade. One thing I have to say before we go, is we've got Dahlia Appleton and I have contributed to a new book kind of staying open for business, so
Yeah.
that's going to be coming out soon, so watch this space about that. So anything around trade and cross-border activity, please let us know about.
Let us know.
Any property questions? So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So stay tuned for episode 4.
Yeah.
You know, we don't know what we're going to be discussing yet. If you have any views, or if you want us to talk about something, then we may consider it, and just let us know.
Yeah.
We'll think about it.
Yeah, just drop us a line.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a good evening. We'll hopefully see you soon.
Yeah, see you soon. Thank
Take care.
you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.